Did you know that waves in an ocean come in two phases? That first wave is just a warning wave. It's a wave to be like, hey, don't turn your back because something bigger is coming on. The second wave is where people get hurt, bad things happen if you're not paying attention. So I like to think of this when I'm working with athletes in the gym. Think of the freeze response as just the first wave. It's simply, hey, your amygdala doesn't feel safe. Why? What could we do right now to help our amygdala feel safer? The problem is that the big wave, the reaction, is where most of the athletes get stuck in a mental block. They freeze, and what do? They get mad, cry, frustrated, give up. That reaction is what's causing their amygdala to not trust them. That overreaction flipped lid. Our goal is when an athlete freezes or when an athlete is doing what I talked about before, like, come on, go. Or I can't do it. I can't do it. I don't feel safe. Well, 0 to 5, how much fear do you have? 5 being overwhelming, 0 being like no fear at all. I don't know, like a 1 and they're scratching and you're like, okay, so you have fear. That's okay to have some fear. And what our job is with that athlete is this, oh, I get a little fear and I give up. That's what I'm giving right now as an example. We want this athlete to see that it's okay to have some fear. Having some fear doesn't mean you're going to block for the rest of your life. It doesn't mean chaos. Having a little bit of fear and conquering it or facing it is the only way through a mental block. That is just facts. You cannot be Goldilocks and only sleep in that soft bed. But I also don't want you to be Goldilocks and only sleep in the hard bed. We got to find just right. Let's finish up the science behind this and then get into some of the fun stuff. All right, so what ends up happening inside of our brain? I realize it's a flow chart. A lot of us might be flow chart adverse. I promise, stay with me. I'm going to help y'all with this. What happens inside of our brain and inside of our body with fear is that there are actually 2 ways that fear occur through our body. The first is an event occurs or there's a stimulus. Let's say it's a snake. What happens is sometimes that pathway of fear is going to go to your cortex. And it's like, oh my gosh, snakes are gross. Remember, the big brain, the cortex job is to think and process. So like, oh my gosh, that's so gross. I don't like them. They make me feel queasy. And so that thought process creates our amygdala to flip our lid and fight, flight, or freeze. The second pathway or the second way that it would work would be an event occurs. I see a snake and I immediately jump out of the way. I'm using this silly example because I'm up at my cabin right now and I like out to my side. I know that sometimes I have to move our furniture and there are like, we have like little lizards. I'm not like, lizards are not a big deal. Like, I think they're really cute when I see them. But when I pull up, things from our outside furniture and something like scurries over my feet, oh, you better believe I jump and squeal like a little pig. It freaks me out. That would be that second pathway of fear, or what I call the fast pathway. Another example, let's talk about that the event cortex amygdala. That's when we start exposing ourselves and thinking, overthinking, what ifs. We ruminate, or what I call merry-go-round thoughts. And when we cycle in that for a long period of time is when our amygdala is then going to flip its lid. So my hope is you all understand that second pathway of fear that we talked about, that event amygdala, that is automatic. Most athletes that I know, that's what ended up happening. Let me give you an example. I'm going to tumble one day, and I'm like, all right, round off back handspring tuck. And I've been doing it all practice, but maybe we had a lot of conditioning and I'm trying to do one more. I go round off back handspring and I freeze going into my tuck. I, as an athlete, had no warning. I had no idea. That has never happened to me before. Another way that could have ended is like I'm flipping and then I freeze in midair and I land uncomfortably. Maybe I sprain my ankle. Maybe I really hurt myself. Maybe I just fall short and touch down, and I've never done that before. That fast pathway of fear. The little wave. Why does that athlete get stuck in a mental block? Because of the big wave. Now, next time I go, or 2 days later when I go, my big brain, my cortex is like, oh, is that going to happen again? I had no idea that was going to happen. And they start spinning on this merry-go-round of thoughts. And so when they go again, they can't throw it. And they get upset and frustrated and disappointed in themselves. And the more they do that, the more they cycle in the negative reactions, the more they're cementing distrust with their amygdala.